You're listening to County Conversations, a podcast brought to you by the New York State Association of Counties. My name is Mark LaVigne. I'm the Deputy Director of the New York State Association of Counties. Welcome. We're joined today by Shaun Groden, Greene County Administrator. Shaun has served as the Greene County Administrator since 2011, and he is the current President of the New York State Association of County Administrators and Managers. Shaun, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Can you give an overview of the role of the county administrator or manager? How does it differ from other forms of county governance structures in New York State?
Sure. Well, I'm appointed by my county legislature, so I don't have to run for election and I don't have to fundraise. So I went through an interview process back in 2010, and I have been since then. Have been with the administration, and I can be a little bit apolitical without having to run for office, without having to embrace a platform or something like that. It allows me to just focus on county services and the residents. A little different than perhaps an executive.
So this is not your first gig as a county administrator. What led you into this type of position?
Originally, my career path was law enforcement. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I was accepted into the FBI training program right at the time that the FBI was determined that we have too many cops as FBI agents. We need more accountants. We need more scientists. So they changed the application process to require either 5 years of experience or a master's degree. So I chose to get my master's degree instead, thinking that if I didn't make it at the end, I would at least still have a master's degree. And during that academic program, I had to do an internship, and I did an internship with Monroe County Office of Finance, and was introduced to budgets and projections and spreadsheets, and bingo, I had a career change before I had a career.
And what was your first career in public service?
I came in through the bottom, civil service testing. I've had multiple civil service tests. I think I had a budget intern, budget technician, budget analyst, senior budget analyst, associate administrative analyst, and then director of finance over a 15-year period.
And where were you the director of finance?
I was in Greece, New York, a suburb of Rochester.
Great. What does a typical day look like for a county administrator or manager in New York State?
Well, they're never the same, which is a good thing. There's no routine per se. What I often say to residents is that the biggest thing we focus on is there's three budgets. There's the one you're auditing from last year, the one you're executing for this year, and the one you're planning for next year. So we do what I would call the autopsies on the math. Where were budget lines good? Where were they bad? And why were they good? Why were they bad? And then we just go from there. County government is a pretty broad-based operation. There isn't a company that would operate like a county government in terms of the service levels and the silos of departments that we have. You know, the diversity from law enforcement, mental health, public health, DMV. You wouldn't have a company like this at all. So it can be fast-paced. We're large. You know, we're 500 plus employees or so, $150 million budget plus capital budgets. So it's big.
It's big. It's a little bit complicated, county government, but I've heard you in conversations before saying that budgeting is simple. So can you explain a simple budget in a complicated organization like a county?
Well, it's carry the one, as you learned in grammar school, right? It is math. I mean, much of what we do is repetitive year to year. You know, probably 50% of a budget is personnel related, between wages and benefits. Then you get into the service levels, the changes that the state or the feds can do to us. As I often say to folks, Greene County did not create New York State. New York State created Greene County. So therefore, what happens upstream comes downstream. And I often have people ask me, why do we still do something? And I say, well, it's the law. Change the law. go to Albany. We can't change it in Catskill, New York.
Right. And as we know this year, even though the states did create the federal government, really, the feds do have a role, especially today, in state governments and what state governments can do, and that trickles down also into what counties do.
Right.
So what is that like today?
Well, the dynamic, I'm going to show you my age here in a minute. I go back to the Reagan years where we had something called revenue sharing. President Reagan, having a budget deficit, then called it deficit sharing, not revenue sharing, and forthwith cut the program. And that was a big reduction in revenue coming to a relatively small suburban town. But I think from his perspective, it was the right decision to make because the federal government was operating in such a deficit. So someone's ox had to be gored. So the general revenue sharing was eliminated. We adjusted, and as we await now the state budget, we will have to adjust as those decisions are made in Albany. I wish they were done more with a long-term decision. Decisions made in April of 26 should take effect in April of 27 because county budgets are already in place. I can't recreate my budget. So changes mid-year can be difficult. If we have to do it, then we have to do it because math is simple.
So what you're talking about is the state trying to or negotiating still the 2026-2027 budget, and that does and will definitely directly impact counties. Can you talk about some specific concerns that counties have with the state budget and non-budget related items? What are you looking at as you're looking out towards the horizon?
Well, much of our budgets, all counties, are funded in part by a federal pass-through or a state levy, which then come with strings. And understanding how the strings may change is very difficult, especially if it happens too quickly. As I said previously, these changes, I don't agree with deficit financing. We should spend within our appropriation level. So those changes that come mid-year for us are very difficult to navigate. When you have programs that deal with social services or law enforcement, I just had a conference on emergency management and trying to get training for county staff so that when we have a national emergency or a local hurricane, flood, how do we all address those operations? When they don't occur on a daily basis, it's difficult to have staff ready to implement emergency management practices if they haven't been doing it regularly and routinely. On the horizon, I think one of the biggest things that's going to totally change not only governmental service but private sector is going to be artificial intelligence. It is not the future, it is now. And yet I feel we're behind the eight ball understanding what is it, how does it operate, how you don't want to use it wrong. I think academia has been perhaps a little bit in front of practical practices that county governments have, but I don't think we can really evaluate today the impact that AI is going to have on operations. It's going to totally change operations, probably on the scale of World War.
Yeah, and we can't predict that now. It's really quite fascinating. And counties across the state are in some sort of continuum of implementation, of exploration and or implementation, but definitely something that the association is looking at with our counties. So I definitely agree with you. That's on the horizon, that's on the now and on the horizon. So shifting gears a little bit, are there any misconceptions about the role of a county administrator or a county manager in New York? Or anywhere else?
Yeah, I think other than the definition of an administrator versus an executive, I think executives they're more political animals than I am. I don't have to follow a platform. I certainly don't have to fundraise and that kind of thing. My focus is really on defining value for the taxpayer. What service levels are we providing? We're kind of basic, yet we're also so wide in our breadth of operations in terms of the service levels that we provide. You get 260 some lane miles of asphalt that has to be redone every year. Our county is not in the water sewer business, but much of my economic development in the county is based upon infrastructure. So I have to work with my towns and villages to make sure that they're up to date, and are they planning for future development, because we can't be stagnant, and we want to have, where are the jobs coming from tomorrow? Do we know where they're coming from? Are we prepared for them? And are we prepared for the development? So that's going to be one of the bigger problems that we face other than AI.
Right, right. Okay, so sticking with that and the jobs and the AI, can you talk a little bit about the challenges or concerns you might have in Greene County, or that your colleagues have across the state with filling jobs, with the jobs that are open in county government at the various different departments? How are you adjusting to fill the positions that need to be filled to provide the services to New Yorkers?
We've had to revamp our human resources outreach. Traditionally, you put an ad in the paper or some publication for a position and you list the job duties. We have probably a 10% vacancy factor right now across many job titles. CDL drivers, EMTs and paramedics. So we have decided to build our own. We will offer financial incentives for people to take a training course to get a CDL license, to become an EMT or a paramedic, and we will grow within the organization, because, as I sometimes kiddingly say, it's not the fact that we get bad applicants. Sometimes we get no applicants, yet we still have to do the job. When you live in a county without a hospital, you better have a good ambulatory transport system. My hospitals are in Albany or Kingston, which can be a 40 to 45-minute drive, so that rig and those technicians are now out of service as they go to Albany or Kingston, and then they might be diverted in the emergency rooms and they sit in the parking lot for a half an hour, an hour. Now they're gone 3 hours. So how are we adapting? How are we moving those assets across a large county, 650 square miles, and do I have enough staff? And at any given day, it's not unusual for the city of Hudson, across the Hudson River, to have to send a transport vehicle over into Catskill because everybody else is either on a call or I didn't have enough manpower to start the shifts anyways.
So it's really interesting to listen to what you're talking about here as a county administrator. You're talking about economic development.
Absolutely.
Right? You're talking about human resources.
Recruitment, retention.
You're talking about emergency management. You're talking about all different, so you're really a CEO. I mean, you're really the administrator of a county, but you're wearing a different hat in any different day or different hour that you're working as the leader of the county.
You have to be up on insurance issues. You have to be up on labor relations, litigation, and technology. And if I have an Achilles heel, technology will be my Achilles heel. And that's why I'm flabbergasted by the AI shift in how operations will change.
So, what are the skills or experiences? We are seeing new county administrators coming into counties across the state. Over the last 5 years, we've had quite a bit of turnover. So if there's somebody out there listening that has maybe are thinking about being a county administrator or working towards that goal, what are some of the skills or experiences that are most critical for someone exploring that role today?
I've done a couple of outreaches to the high schools and career days, let's say. And one of the questions that I ask the students is, what is the biggest business in the world? And then, the hands will go up with varying explanations, and I'll say no. The biggest business is government. We employ more people than any other sector, hands down, especially when you include education. So it's a great career path. but you need a good broad-based academic background. You don't need to be a statistician, but you need to understand math. You need to understand projections on budgets, on assessed valuations, on how economies can change. My budget in particular is really prone to disposable income of the community or tourists. The sales tax is my single biggest revenue. It far outweighs the property tax. But that's a little bit daunting because it's based upon disposable income and people's ability to spend that money. So in downturns, when you get high unemployment rates or maybe a national tragedy where people stay home and they're not traveling, that's going to affect my budget. So when we put projections together, we have to be conservative on revenue but realistic on expenses and understand what would we have to do to meet the gap if something happens for us. So we have built up reserves. As again, if the sales tax takes a hit, I have a reserve fund that I can go to try to get us over that hump for a 5-year period, because economies go in cycles. But it takes 3 or 4 years to come out of that cycle. If you go back to the 08, 09 collapse, my county lost 10% of its sales tax. In today's numbers, that would be $7 million. That's not a small piece of a fund that I would have to move and shift, but to be able to rely on the fact that we have a reserve, we could use a fifth of it or a sixth of it and come out of this economy slowdown until we're back to whatever the new normal is. So you have to be able to appreciate economies. I read probably 15 to 20 publications a day. I want to know where the economy is going. I want to know where jobs are and where they aren't. I need to understand the tourism industry, particularly for Greene County, the medical industry. We have a lot of health insurance programs. I often say to my HR staff, I need to know where the healthcare industry is going to be in 5 years. So we have to do a lot of research. We have to be in front of that ball. We have to be proactive and not wait for things to happen on our desk.
Yeah, so it comes back to simple math and budgeting, right?
Yeah.
But then along the way, you're wearing all these different hats.
A lot of hats.
Every day.
Every day is different with a lot of hats. And there's a lot of zeros, but it's simple math at the end of the day.
Yeah. So you've been in Greene County for a while?
I've been here 16 years in Greene County. I was 7 years in St. Clair County, Michigan, and I cut my teeth 15 years in the town of Greece. So I've been around a while.
And never the same day, every day. What gets you up in the morning, Shaun? What motivates you in your career as a public administrator?
Well, I love going to work. The old saying, do what you love what you do. I do love it. It's the challenge. The challenge of maintaining all of the service levels. If you think of the silos that we have in local government that perhaps is different from a state or federal government, I'm often asked, what is the most difficult part of your job? Is it taxes? Is it politics? Is it what happens at the state or federal level coming down? And I've reserved my answer a couple of times, and I've said, the most difficult part of my job is managing people. We employ 500 or so employees across all these individual buckets. And to get them motivated, to get them to do their job, to get them to think value, so that when we cost out the price of government service, we can defend it, we can explain it because the math is simple. But like the private sector, every form of service has a unit price. What are the variables to produce that service level? Can we improve one of those variables? Can we get rid of one of the variables? As I said previously, you're auditing a budget, executing a budget, and planning a budget. So do you learn from your mistakes? Do you shift mid-year? And then do you change for future years? And that's the challenge, because we're not going to go out of business. We're here to stay. Some of our lines may go away as they've had in the past, but the primary focus of county government is asphalt, snow plowing, law enforcement, public health, mental health. Those service levels are not going to go away.
Great. As we're coming to the end of our conversation, I'd like to remind our listeners that you've been listening to County Conversations, a podcast brought to you by the New York State Association of Counties. We've been joined today by Shaun Groden, Greene County Administrator. Shaun, I want to leave the last word to you. What message or reflection do you have for your colleagues in county government?
I think there's an old saying, you don't have to rehearse the truth. So I operate being pretty direct. When I'm asked a question, I give a pretty straightforward answer that I don't have to define, or I don't have to plagiarize, so to speak. I think all the public hearings that I go to, and when the citizens come to the podium and they ask a specific question about something, I try to be just very direct. I try to look them square in the eye and give the best answer that I can, and then I can substantiate that answer with my facts and figures and historical numbers. And I think, while no one perhaps, Ben Franklin was right, death and taxes, right? But I think people understand that they need a tax base, that they need public service. As I mentioned earlier, the crisis that we are going through right now is in our ambulatory transport system. I think the county needs to consolidate this service level from a variety of individual dependents and consolidate into one county organization. It most likely would become the largest county department we have. But when you don't have a hospital, and you tell someone that transport time to your home is 25 minutes, that's a service level that's going to be rejected by the citizen. They will say, I want a better service, and I'm willing to pay for it. And we have to demonstrate to that we can do it at the most efficient way possible, so that when they call 911, they have a confidence level that rig is going to show up in a short period of time and take care of me.
Great. Thank you, Shaun. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.